Hi, Cecilia. It's Ellen, and I'm very happy to see that you wrote the essays. I hope that whatever I sent you was somewhat useful. Let's take a look and see what you wrote. Experts throughout both the developing, careful with your spelling here, throughout the developing and developed world have debated on the impact that fast food has had in several countries and the negative effects brought, careful with your spelling, by it. It's one thing. Fast food is uncountable. Some believe that this is not a real and important problem. Personally, I strongly disagree. This essay will argue that fast food changed many aspects of our life using examples from the Rome Healthy with an H Institute and Sapienza University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, this was fine. I don't love this section here, that it is not a real and important problem. No one is questioning that, whether it's a real and important problem. The question that is being discussed is its negative effect on individuals, families, and society. That's what you should be addressing, and that's what you need to bring up in your introduction. Okay, so I think that what you wrote here is a little too vague. It's not specific enough. You're not addressing these three elements, which is what I told you in the video suggestion that I sent you. Okay, so yes, rephrase and do some rewording of the prompt and of the question, but don't rephrase it so much that it doesn't resemble what you're actually asked to talk about. Okay, so here you said you strongly disagree. A lot of students do this. Basically, you have two contradicting sentences here. One says it's not a real problem, and then this one says, I strongly disagree. I don't think it's enough just to put a comma and then personally. I really do believe that you need to have an extra word here, an extra word showing contrast. So here you could have put however, but, yet. One of those would have been fine, but it does need something because a comma alone does not do enough to show that you're about to contradict what you've just said. All right, so let's move on. Fine. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that fast food would be dangerous. Okay, not would, but is dangerous for human health, not just physically, but even mentally. Careful with spelling. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, many traditions correlated on food are disappearing, and the growth of fast food is the main cause. Spelling and spelling. I also think that correlated is a wrong word here. Secondly, it has been proved that that great consumption of fast food has increased illnesses such as obesity. For example, recent empirical research by Rome Healthy Institute Capital demonstrated that 22% of all customers, you meant customers, so change around your spelling, have serious problems with obesity. This illness is extremely dangerous for the heart and most without the vital organs. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that fast food has a negative impact, especially when consuming various times a week. Okay, so for whom is it dangerous? Remember that in the video I talked to you about various ways to talk about this, and you do need to mention individuals, society, and families. You didn't mention any of those groups here. You just talked very generally, and so it doesn't really feel like you've answered the question, but you haven't really touched upon the areas of the question that they've asked you to talk about. So it's the difference between a good response and a very good response. Okay, so let's move on. On the other hand, although there is a case for these types S of food enriching, no, you don't enrich obesity, you increase obesity. And in fact, I wouldn't even say you increasing obesity, I would say you increasing obesity rates. So there is a case for these types of food increasing obesity rates and other illnesses. The impact of fast food cannot be overstated. Careful with your spelling. This is largely because in this period of time where everything is accelerated and nobody uses the right time to eat, these food chains are required from people. I don't know what you mean by food chains here. For example, an extensive study by Rome Sapienza University showed that over 70% of people do not have the time to dedicate to a proper meal. Research, singular, it's uncountable, indicated that the lunch break is the one which should be quicker, especially for those who have an intensive work life. I don't understand this. This part of society needs a cheap and fast meal. Hence, fast food is not a great deal, a wonderful opportunity to satisfy those customers. Spelling. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that fast food. What? That's not what you said at all. That fast food is not the best option for a healthy diet. Okay, so Cecilia, I know you had problems with this essay. I know that it was rather challenging for you, but this paragraph is really rather confusing. First of all, you talked about the impact of fast food cannot be overstated. You had just talked about how negative it was and how it increases obesity and so forth. So the understanding was, especially with this, on the other hand, everything in this first sentence led me to believe that you were going to talk about the positive ways, the positive things that eating fast food can do for us. And this whole time, I was waiting to hear, what's the positive impact of fast food on individuals, family, and societies? So here you said nobody has the time to eat. Here you said 70% of people don't have the time to eat. And in fact, that lunch should be quicker. So people need a fast and cheap meal. And I'm like, okay, here's where she's saying it. She's saying that fast food helps this way. And then you say fast food is not the best option for a healthy meal. So this paragraph does not have a central idea. Okay, it does not have one sort of unifying idea where somebody can look at the paragraph and say in one or two sentences, okay, this paragraph is about this. And that's what you want. You want to have unified paragraphs that are, in fact, so unified that someone can say after reading them, okay, in this paragraph, the writer has said that fast food is really dangerous because physically and mentally it does bad things to us. It increases obesity, it increases problems with the heart and vital organs, and this can have a whole range of effects on our body. Done. Now, in this paragraph, I was not able to do that at all because on the one hand, you said it was positive, on the other hand, you said it was negative. So the central idea is just not clear. And that's not going to help you in terms of a coherence and cohesion score, okay? So that's something I want you to look at very, very closely. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is this whole thing that we talked about in terms of individuals, family, and society. You did not mention them anywhere. So this, you're talking about fast food, and that's fine, but you didn't talk about those three factors, okay? And I didn't really see you talking about traditional food anywhere either. You see, what this essay is supposed to be about is this shift from traditional food to fast food and how this shift has affected these three areas of our society. Okay, so each paragraph should talk about what we lose from shifting from traditional food to fast food. And then again, in terms of individuals, society, and family. Okay, so it's not a really tightly organized essay. There were errors throughout the essay, grammatically. You saw I corrected a lot of plurals, a lot of singulars, stuff like that I corrected throughout. So there were some consistent problems throughout the essay in terms of grammar. I think there were a couple of areas in terms of vocabulary where I lost coherence. I didn't understand what you were trying to say. So it needs a little work for sure. Okay. But in addition to the grammar and the lexical issues, it really needs to be more closely and more tightly organized. You just really, 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 really need to focus on the question. And before you actually start to write, really have a very closely, very tightly organized idea in your head about what your answer to whatever the question is. Work on that before you even start to write. Spend a few minutes on it so that you can brainstorm and think of ideas that are absolutely closely associated with what you have been asked. Okay. And this is going to make a big difference in your task achievement and in your coherence and cohesion score. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at your task 1 attempt here with the shoe sales. All right, so the bar charts show different types of shoe sales during 2018 in several European countries. From the 2 types of shoe sales indicated, it is notable that Hungary had the highest number of black shoes sold, almost 150. The shoe sales in Italy and Belgium are more than 100, but Italy sold more than Belgium of approximately 20. The United Kingdom reached 100 of black leather shoes sold. All the other countries are lower than 100 in this type of sales. Okay. So, you know what? Let me read the whole thing first and then we'll talk about it, okay? So, according to the data provided, Poland, Germany, and Hungary are the nations that sold the highest number of brown leather shoes, both over than 100. Italy, too, is above 100 units, but lower than the other 3 countries. Ireland achieved 100 shoes sold of this type of color. France and United Kingdom are lower than 100, but UK sold a bit more than France. Overall, it is visible that the lowest number of brown leather shoes have been sold in Belgium, just over 0, sorry. While it is France, the country where the minimum black leather shoes have been sold, almost 25. Instead, Hungary and Poland are the countries where there are the highest number of shoe sales, respectively black and brown ones. Okay, so I wanted to read this whole thing because I was trying to understand where your overview is. I think that there's a little confusion about how to organize this, okay? So, let's talk about what every single task 1 needs. Every single task 1 needs a clear introduction. I thought your introduction was absolutely fine. Where you kind of started getting confused was with your overview. And that's why I wanted to read the whole thing first before I actually made my corrections. I thought initially that this was your overview. And then I realized later on that it wasn't because you had this sentence that started with overall. However, when I look at them and when I actually read them more closely, it looks like neither one of those is in fact an overview. And I'll tell you why. Neither one is an overview because they both have details. An overview is not supposed to have details. It's only supposed to literally show the most obvious, the most like highest number, the most obvious trend, the most whatever. But it's not supposed to include data. So, what could an overview for this chart be? It could have been that overall, Hungary had the highest number of black shoe sales, while Poland had the highest number of brown shoe sales. All right, that's one thing. Or you could have said, overall, the greatest number of shoes sold were in Hungary, while the least were in Belgium. Also, absolutely appropriate. Or you could have been a little more specific. The greatest number of shoes sold were black leather shoes in Hungary, and the least were brown leather shoes in Belgium. So any of those would have been a very appropriate overview. There's no data, but you mentioned the most obvious thing, the highest and or the lowest. Well, you wouldn't just mention the lowest on its own. We pretty much always mention the highest or the biggest change or whatever. But here it's appropriate to mention the highest number. And maybe that, it was black leather shoes. And then if you want to mention the lowest number, that's optional. Okay? So that's what an overview should be like. Some people put it right after the introduction. Some people put it at the end. Personally, I have a number of reasons why I like it right after the introduction. That's where I think it belongs, but it doesn't really make a difference in your score. Some of the reasons why I suggest putting it right after introduction are simply practical. Okay, so you have your introduction, you have your overview. Then let's take a look at your, oops, sorry about that. Okay. I wasn't really clear how you divided your paragraphs. So you said that here you were talking about black leather shoes. I understood that. You were talking about Hungary. There is inaccuracy in your data. You talked about 100, 150, whatever. Look at these zeros here. Those zeros indicate that we're talking about thousands. So it's not 150, it's 150,000 black leather shoes. So it's really important that you include that, because if you get that wrong, an examiner will mark you down because of inaccuracy. It's just not accurate. Um, you're not explaining the chart and its data accurately, and so that's going to reduce your score. Okay, so that was one thing, and that was consistent throughout this answer. So really be careful about these numbers here. They're either here or they're on the side, but make sure you refer to them. That's what that means. You should have been talking about 150,000. Okay, so I wasn't really clear what this paragraph was about. Yes, you mentioned black leather shoes here, but I wasn't clear that this whole paragraph was about black leather shoes. I also didn't totally understand the way you organized your answer. So, what did you tell us here? You said you started with Hungary and black, then you talked about Italy and Belgium. Why? Let's see, Italy. So, Italy and black leather shoes was here, and then Belgium. Okay, what did you say about them? They were both over 100. Okay. And then Italy. Okay. Then Ireland achieves 100. France. Okay. France. Okay. Fine. All right. I understand the way you organized it. It's fine. But what wasn't really entirely clear was that the whole paragraph was about black leather shoes. You only mentioned black here, here. Okay. It's fine. It's fine. I wanted it basically, you know what was missing for me, Cecilia? Some signposts. One thing that I want you to remember is that when an examiner gets your essay, that examiner has about 100 essays to do during a day. 100. It's a lot. And the examiner doesn't really have a lot of time. And so what you need to do is you need to make his or her job as efficient and as quick as possible. And so what that means is you have to have some signposts. It's not enough to just say, according to the data provided. Get rid of that. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help the examiner. So what you could have said is regarding black shoes. Or no, actually not here. Sorry. Where am I? Here we go. So from the two types of black shoes indicated. No, instead of that, that doesn't help you. Just say, as far as black shoes are concerned, it is noticeable that blah, 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 blah. All right, this makes it absolutely clear to the examiner and, in this case to me, what type of shoes you're referring to. Okay, and then here, the same thing. Regarding brown leather shoes, Poland, Germany, and Hungary are the nations that sold the highest number of this type. Okay, and then it looks like the rest of your data is actually really quite good. So what's missing for me is really clear signposting, really clear indication of what each paragraph is about. Okay, so now one last piece of advice with this bar chart. I read the whole thing again just to make sure. I want to talk to you a little bit about key features. Now, key features are what are going to make the difference between a band 4 and a band anything else. So if you're missing any key features of this diagram, you cannot and will not get anything above a 4 for task achievement, a 4. So what are the key features? Well, key features essentially are the categories. So black and brown leather shoes, and then of course you've got your countries. You've got 8 countries, right? Is it 8? Yes. So you have to mention them by name at least once. I'm not saying you have to have data for all of them, but mention them by name. You mentioned absolutely every single one except for Holland. So without mentioning Holland, it is very possible, it is very likely that an examiner will give you a 4 for task achievement just because you didn't mention it. And there are a handful of ways to get past this and to, not have this happen to you. One thing is a lot, and I've seen this in a ton of IELTS tests. The bar chart shows different types of shoe sales during 2018 in several European countries. And then, as soon as you say that, in parentheses, write the name of the countries. This is the easiest, clearest, surest way that you will not miss any countries. Okay. And then you can avoid that band 4 because it's such a shame. I've seen this so many times, you would be shocked. Really, really good writing, but because they missed one of the countries, automatically it lowers their score. Okay. So be aware of that and try to avoid it. All right, that's pretty much it. We spent a ton of time on both these essays. So go ahead, correct them. Send us send us a new set of essays. Tell me if you have any questions or concerns about this set, and we'll talk about it. Okay. Good luck.